welcome to Soul Talk with Rabbi David Aaron and Leora Mandel. Rabbi Aaron, it sometimes happens that we end up being our worst enemy. And what I mean by that is, I think we all have what I guess I can call the inner critic, that little voice inside that puts us down. Why did you do that? You're not smart. You could have done better. We constantly are talking to ourselves, and so often that talk is negative and critical. And it struck me one day that I think sometimes, and I'd imagine many can relate, that we speak to ourselves in a way that I would hope I wouldn't allow somebody else to speak to me in that manner. Or if they did, I would suggest to the person, you shouldn't be friends with someone who's so critical of you and so negative and always putting you down. So my question is, what is that voice, so to speak, inside our head that we all have? I'm calling it the inner critic. Where is it coming from? And what can we do to tame it, to sort of quiet it down? And how can we I imagine there should be some other voice of positivity. How can we amplify that and put the damper on that critical voice?
Right. Yeah, I think we all struggle with that at some level. I think it all starts off that we know ourselves too well. We've been with ourselves since the day we were born, and we seem to remember what we do wrong more than we remember what we do right. There's a basic attitude that we are driven by pain more than pleasure. If somebody needs to lose weight, then the doctor can say, "Hey, Jay, you're going to look terrific. Imagine yourself in a few sizes, less," and that sounds very pleasurable, and it has some motivation. But sadly, it's more motivating to say, "Hey, Jay, if you don't go on a diet, you're going to die." So fear tends to generate more motivation than the love of the pleasure that I'm looking for. And so we remember pain a lot more than pleasure because it's been something that we've avoided. It's something that is scary. And so when we think back to what we've done in our lives, I think we have a tendency to remember the wrong things we did more than the right things we did. So we're giving fuel to this little inner critic that in our tradition would be called the Yetzer Hara, the inclination for bad, to help us feel bad. And we need to talk back by creating a case that that's not true, that we're good or we had certainly at least good intentions. And so that inner critic is trying to pull up from our files all the mistakes we've made in the past and try and convince us that if we made those mistakes, we are a mistake. If we have failed, then clearly we are failures. And why try again? Because it's harping on you don't want to mess up again, do you? So don't cry again. So just let go.
It's really so many, I think, human revelations in what you're sharing in terms of understanding human nature. Because I think this would go into the category of it's human nature to focus on the negative, what needs to be fixed, what we've done wrong, which to some degree I say is, I guess, a good thing because how would I make changes in my behavior if I wasn't noticing where things went off? But I think for so many of us, our inner critic is overactive, and instead of being helpful to say, oh, you made a mistake, try harder the next time, we just get so stuck in the negative side of it and the putting ourselves down part.
I think what we could try and do is thank it. Say, thank you for pointing out some of the things I should be aware of so that this time I really will succeed even more than in the past. What you resist persists. And so by saying, oh, that's not true, no, that's right. Oh, some of that is right. And it is possible that I think by welcoming it rather than fighting it, and thanking that voice for pointing out things that I should be careful of. And because that will help me really succeed at this point. There's a teaching from one of the great sages, Arnold Schwarzenegger. he was in his book where he explains why and how he became Mr. Universe 5 times in weightlifting. And he said the difference between him and his opponents or the competitors is they were afraid to get criticism. They'd rather live in the la la land of their self, satisfaction. He said, I would crave criticism. I would seek criticism. I wanted criticism because I knew if somebody could tell me what's wrong, what I'm doing wrong, then I could fix it. And a lot of people rather not know what they're doing wrong and pretend everything's okay, and that's not the formula for success. And so I think here too, maybe the inner critic has some good points and that I should listen to. And maybe if I listen to some of the good points, I'll be able to have a rebuttal with the ones that are over exaggerated or not true at all, and have a better chance of using the inner critic to succeed because it's pointing out places that I could work at, improve on, and up my game.
So what you're sharing to is almost counterintuitive, and yes, yet it makes sense. Because on the one hand, I would think resist. This is a negative voice in my head. Try to say I don't want to listen to you. But on the other hand, it almost sounds like that makes that get stronger, and it gets stuck. I guess I'd call it as negative energy. And whereas what you're sharing is if I welcome it in, but put it in a positive context of, oh, like, thanks for sharing. This is something I can work on and I will be a better version of myself. It's great to know that, this is an area that can help me make my life better. So if I'm with that perspective, then welcoming it in, which again almost seems to be counterintuitive, it actually, I won't get stuck in it. It actually takes something negative and actually makes it positive, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, even when you're talking to somebody and you're in some kind of argument, there's a position that Judaism says, dan l'kav zchut. One should give somebody the benefit of the doubt. But that's not the only way to interpret that. Dan l'kav zchut means find the merit in what they're saying, and that will diffuse things. But if you're having an argument with somebody and you just totally say nothing you could be saying has any value, so then they'll fight you even more. But if you are able to accept, that point is valuable. I agree with that and I appreciate that. That actually kind of gives you a little more handle on it and enables you to have a better conversation with it.
So, in a sense, and this is something else I wanted to ask you about, it almost sounds like you're saying we have to speak it back to this voice. It's like there's this little voice that goes off inside of us. It's interesting because it's like a voice, but it's not like you hear it. But you know it's there and it has its conversation with you of that's very negative, critical, putting us down, etc. And it's almost like that happens automatically. But then I consciously have to make a choice to speak back to it. Like even the idea, thank you for pointing that out. That's me almost having I guess we call that metacognition. It's like I'm aware of my own thinking. And if I just let the negative critical voice keep going, it will take over. But if I have a conversation with it, it can actually become a positive thing.
And I think one of the ways to neutralize its power is to ask it questions. How do you know that? What is that based on? And provide evidence that that's the way it's always been, and offer some examples where that wasn't the way it is. People have a tendency to speak in very general ways. I'm always this way. You're always this way. Yeah, it's all my fault. It's all your fault. We tend to exaggerate and then we sabotage ourselves by speaking a language that is not precise. And yes, it's true. I have made that mistake in the past, but I haven't made it an amazing amount of times. And who says this won't be different? And I'm glad you brought that up because now I'll even be more careful.
This feels like a court trial where you have the prosecutor and you have the defendant. But I guess the point is we should be our own defendant. We can keep prosecuting ourselves and finding all the reasons why we're not good enough. And there may be many reasons, but there may also be many reasons why I'm more than good enough and I'm putting in a lot of effort and I made a lot of progress. It just depends on, I guess we should be our own defenders.
Well, I think there's a basic principle in Judaism that is very optimistic that everything that happens in my life is in my best interest and is an opportunity. And I don't see why this shouldn't be the same. There's an inner voice inside me that is saying negative stuff. And I could look at it and say, oh, this is just getting me down, or this is actually offering me an opportunity to strengthen myself, to be more confident with myself, to take some lessons from it and learn from it. But if we always say, where's the opportunity in what this voice is saying to me, then I'll go look for that. If I just say this is bad, this is worthless, this is an obstacle, rather than an opportunity, then we'll turn it into an obstacle. We need to always ask ourselves, where is there an opportunity, and where what I'm doing, where I'm at, who I'm speaking to, and what voices are firing off in my head.
No, it's so interesting because I think when we first started the conversation, in my mind, I'm thinking about this critical voice as being destructive. And yet, what you're showing is it's almost sort of neutral. It depends on how I respond to it. If I respond to it and resisting it, or just letting it ramble without having a conversation with it, it can be destructive. But if I enter a conversation and ask it questions or say, thank you for sharing, because now I'm going to think about how I can become a better version of myself from what you're pointing out. If we counter it that way, then it's actually very constructive.
Absolutely. I mean, imagine somebody who's training for boxing. Not that that's an example that I somewhat resonate with, but it's a good example. Someone is training to box and his coach is trying to hit him. And so imagine he forgets, hey, this is my coach. He's trying to teach me how to fight. So he has to throw a few, through a couple of punches at me to show me how to block them. But he's not against me. He's on my side. And he's giving me an opportunity to learn how to perfect my skill.
So I guess the question is with this inner critic, am I seeing it as an opponent, in which case my goal is to smack it down, or do I see it as like my coach? And even if it feels like there's a smack, but that's part of my training, and if I have the right perspective on it, then I recognize that it's actually in my best interest. This line I realized is actually so life changing because I actually just wrote it down when you were saying it. Everything that happens in my life is in my best interest. If I would live by that, there are so many situations in life that would be flipped from having a negative experience and creating what I can call negative energy to being a positive. Everything through that lens is building an opportunity.
Our ultimate choice in life is what we choose to believe is going on here, what interpretation we're giving what's happening here. And if I look at this negative voice and say it's negative, it's out to get me, it's trying to pull me down, rather than it's actually trying to lift me up by giving me challenges and challenging me to question it and question how I can do things even better. And it goes back to the sparring partner of the boxer. It's like, is this guy trying to hit me, or is he actually trying to teach me how to block a punch?
Hmm. Wow. The difference in perspective. It's the same action, but the difference, the interpretation of that action makes all the difference.
All
And
the
how,
difference.
but this point of saying what I choose, this really is about choice because I think so often we just think some of this is just so automatic, or it becomes automatic because we don't realize that we have a choice. So maybe the initial thought is automatic, and especially maybe it's because we were brought up with a voice, maybe from the outside, from a parent, from a teacher, from somebody that was very critical. And why aren't you doing this right? And that voice is in our head, and we don't even sometimes realize. But I have a feeling that if a person feels like they're feeling down a lot, then start noticing what's going on inside your head. And then once you start hearing that inner critic, make a choice. How, okay, if I just let this go, then that's a choice too. It's going to continue to drag me down. But if I can respond to it and focus on that this is an opportunity, where's my growth point here, then it changes everything.
That's right. You have to simply ask yourself, what do I believe? Do I believe this voice is trying to undermine me, or this voice is trying to uplift me? And I choose to believe that this voice is actually trying to uplift me by challenging me and giving me an opportunity to counter it and take lessons from it. And I don't think people are choosing their commentary, and I think people don't realize they're going on an automatic interpretation of, well, this is, it's like you have to ask yourself, what interpretation am I giving this voice? Is it on my side or is it against me? If I choose to believe it's against me, then I'm going to find every evidence that it's against me and it will probably bring me down. But if I choose to believe that this is for me, this is an opportunity, then I'm going to look for how this can lift me up.
Hmm. You know, if I recall, but I hope you'll remind me, Rabbi, when God created the world, there was this everything was good, and then there was something called tov ma'od, very good. And if I recall, there was some understanding that that's connected to there's the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov, and that there was even a very good description about this what we call the evil inclination, which is very much our inner critic. And it's so hard to understand, but the way you're explaining this actually really makes sense with that understanding.
Absolutely. A person could do something good, But if they want to do something very good, then they have to challenge what they're doing and seek opportunities to do it better. And so having this inner critic, you know, is giving me the opportunity to examine what I'm doing and see if I'm doing the best I can. And if I let it bring me down, because I think it's trying to bring me down, then it will bring me down. If I realize it's really not trying to bring me down, it's really trying to strengthen me and point things out that I should be aware of and give me an opportunity to use the strength of and the power to say you're wrong, it's okay. You know, a number of years ago, I was walking in Machane Yehuda, which is the fruit market of Jerusalem. An old man walked up to me, very old man, he came up to me and started saying horrible things about me. You are this and you are that and you are this and you are that. And I said, "Excuse me, sir, I don't know you." And he didn't like that. And he said, "Oh, but I know you." And he just went on and just started laying all this criticism against me. And so I had to decide, what do I choose to believe just happened? I decided that I was being challenged in how much I believe in myself and how much I love myself and how much my love is unconditional and how much do I trust that this guy doesn't know me and he's just mistaken. That I think that was the challenge.
What I'm realizing now is the importance of, again, asking ourselves these questions, engaging in the conversation with that inner critic, because if we're going to live our life on autopilot, then we're headed for a disaster. We're headed to a place where we aren't whole and complete, and realizing that even things that, again, saying, you said that everything that happens in my life is in my best interest. To live your life that way takes thinking, a perspective that you're sharing now, but then actively thinking about and questioning what's going on in our life through the lens of that perspective. And I'm thinking, everyone understands a car, you have to actively control the car. You drive the car, you have to choose how to steer the car. And oddly enough, so often in our life, we're not doing that for ourselves. But what you're really showing is the power of when we do direct our lives and do direct that inner critic. It's not good or bad, but if we direct it and don't let it be an autopilot, it really can serve us quite well.
So, you know, it's all there in our best interest. And if we choose to believe that and that's the narrative we say to ourselves, then that's where we'll take it.
We're headed we're headed to a place where we aren't whole and complete, and realizing that even things that, again, saying, you said that everything that happens in my life is in my best